So let's start. Then October, November 2024, paper 2 for AS. And like before, we would only be looking at the questions that are a bit technical or that are purely pseudocode questions. So anything that is definition based would be, I'll just skip it. You can look at the notes for that. So I'm skipping the first question. There's nothing as such difficult here. Then we have question number 2. Okay, this is a very interesting question, one of my favorite questions to give in the class as well, especially in the start. So the program is about writing a conceal module. So what you have to do is you are developing a program that will be used to store the bank card information. Okay. And then the card numbers are stored as strings, and the strings are between 10 and 20 characters in length, and all the characters except the last 4 are replaced with a star. Okay, as you see in the real life on the websites, especially when you're making a payment. So conceal will take a string representing a card number. That means, so this should instantly be identified as a parameter. Okay, and then return. So return means instantly you should be labeling it as a function. And the return type would be string. So this would be the return type. Okay, so you have some string. Again, they've given us the dummy values, so we don't really need to make any dummy values of our own. So you'll be given a string, and you have to extract the last 4 characters as it is, and then the remaining characters would be replaced by the number of characters would be replaced by stars for each character. Similarly, you'll count the number of characters. So what we have to do here is we have to also use the length function here. We have to use the write function here because we'll be extracting the values from the write, and we'll also be counting how many values we have. So we'll need the insert document. So insert document, again, you guys know, you apply the write function with the number of characters, and you get that many characters as a string, and then length is used on a string to count how many characters are there in the string, and it includes space and any alphabetical and non-alphabetical characters as well at the same time. Okay, so now how will we define the logic? Okay, so if we look at this program, let's say we have this number 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, and then the question says that you only have to get the last 4 characters in the original form. So let's say if a string has 10 characters total, and then the right 4 are taken out, so the right 4 would be taken out, so you're left with 10 minus 4, which is equal to 6, which means you would be creating 6 stars in your string, right? And in order to create a string of stars in the same line, we need to use some sort of a loop, and then we also need to concatenate. So if you guys remember correctly, you have to use this operator, the concatenation operator, the ampersand sign. So it will join strings. So what we'll be doing is we'll be saying that string is equal to string ampersand your star. So this will combine, if you run the loop 6 times, so this will literally get you the 6 stars in one line. So this is a fairly simple question, nothing as such difficult here. Okay, so let's do this. So we have October, November 2024, paper 2. Okay, we are looking at question number 2. Okay, here we go. So first of all, what you have to do is you have to write the body of the function that is called conceal. So we'll be doing that. So since it's a function, we need to use the right syntax for it. That would be function, then conceal, C capital. Then they're saying that it must take a parameter representing a string card number. So let's call it card number, and then this would be a string, or you can just keep it lowercase as well, that's completely fine, and then it returns a string as well, and then there would be an end function. So you'll get 1 mark just for writing all of this accurately. Okay, so I'll leave the space here for declarations. We'll do these towards the end. Now first of all, let's extract the last four characters. Very simple. So let's call it, maybe these are the original characters that we're not supposed to hide, so let's call them original maybe. So original characters would be right card number followed by 4. So this returns last 4 characters. Okay, so we have separated them. Now what we have to do is we have to do this part. Now we have to generate a string with the remaining amount of stars. So let's see how many stars we have remaining. So let's check, maybe let's call it star count. Star count is equal to the length of the card number. Let's say if it has 10 characters minus 4. So this will give you the count of stars to be generated. And this is the number of times we have to run the loop for. So then we run a loop for I want to star count, and then I do next I. Okay, so for I, alright, now what we have to do is we simply have to generate this many stars, and like I said, we just concatenate it in a string. So let's call it hidden maybe. Hidden is equal to hidden concatenated by the stars. So we'll have a star created this many times. Alright, so once the loop ends, okay, now the hidden must be a string and it must be empty. So I'll declare it here because it's an important step. So hidden would be set to empty here, like this. This is an empty string. Alright, so by the time this loop ends, hidden would be something like this. So let's say if the original string was of 10 characters, so it would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characters. Now what we need to do is we need to just add the original characters in here. So if the original example was 7890, so we just need to bring it back, which is technically stored in this variable original. So we just have to combine these, and I can just say that we can create a new string. Let's call it, or we can just use hidden, we don't need to create a new one. So hidden is equal to hidden joined by the original string, which was the last 4 characters, and then we return hidden. That's it. Right, so what did we do? We created an empty string, we generated that many stars from the string, so the total length minus the number minus the 4 characters. So if it had, let's say, 15 characters, 15 minus 4 would be 11, so we generate 11 stars in one line, and then we had extracted the rightmost 4 characters, and at the end I'm just concatenating them in one string, and then I'm returning that string. Very straightforward. Okay, so we're done with this part. Moving on. Moving on to the next part, that is part B. So in part B1, they're saying that the requirements have changed, and now we're supposed to write this as a procedure. We will process 100 card numbers each time it is called, and the card numbers will be stored in a 2D array called card number. The original string will be stored in column 1 and the modified string in column 2. So we have to declare the array. Okay, now we are processing 100 card numbers, and then there are 2 columns, right? So there would be 100 rows here. So there's supposed to be 100 rows, and the void told that there would be 2 columns. So we just have to declare them. So declare name of the array is card number colon array. Again, this is the syntax given to us. Then square brackets 1 to 100, or you can do 0 till 99, comma, number of columns, which are 2, and of type string. So you get 2 marks for this. The new procedure conceal will write the modified string to the corresponding element in column 2. The array card number is passed as a parameter to the new procedure conceal. Identify how this should be specified. Okay, so you guys might remember they're saying that we need to write the modified string to the corresponding element. So whenever they ask you how the value is supposed to be passed in the parameter, there are 2 values. You have byval and you have byref. So in byval, what we do is we just pass in a copy of the value in parameter, and then in byref what we do is we pass in the actual address of variable as a parameter, and then such that all the changes are made in the subroutine or in the module are reflected throughout for the variable. So this is supposed to be byref because they're saying that the modified string will be written, and it's you need to actually show the new changes. So you just need to write byref and you'll get 1 mark for this. So byref, if you pass in a variable byref like we didn't do here, so let's say if I make it byref, that means if I change card number to, let's say if I just change card number to 0 here, I know it's written after the return statement, but let's bring it here. So if I change it to 0 here, and then if I try to access the value of card number outside, so then it would have been 0 as well. So this is what byref does. It will literally allow you to update the variable inside the module, and then it would be reflected everywhere in the program as well. Okay, moving on. So we have question 3. This is a typical ADT style question. Okay, so the question says we have a program that uses a stack to hold up to 60 numeric values, so integer values. The stack is implemented using 2 integer variables and a 1D array. So it has 60 values and they're of type real. There is a global variable sp. So global variable again means that it would be accessible throughout the program. It acts as a stack pointer that points to the next available stack location. The value of sp represents an array index, and then you have another global variable called onStack, which represents the number of values that are currently on the stack, and it grows upwards from index 1. Okay, so whenever they tell you that the pointer would be pointing to the next available stack location, so it simply means, let's say if we have a stack. Okay, so if we have a stack like this, so let's say the first value is 20, so sp would actually be pointing to the next available space, right? So it would be pointing on the value after 20. So let's say if I store 10 here, so then sp goes up and points to the next available space, so on and so forth. So now they're saying that give the initial values of where they would be assigned. So since sp would be always pointing to the next available space, the initial value to sp should be 1, because if it is pointing to 1, then that means first you'll have to put the value at index 1 here. So this would be index 1, this would be index 2, this would be index 3. So you'll put a value here, you'll store the value here, you'll push the value here, and then you'll do sp plus 1, so it goes to the next available space. And onStack is representing the number of values, so they must initially simply be 0 because there is no values on the stack. Okay, explain why is it not necessary to initialize the stack before the stack is used. Okay, the reason is very simple. So whenever we have a stack and then we are supposed to add the values or remove the values, so essentially we'll just end up overwriting them. If we have, say, a stack visualizer here, so if I add values and if I keep adding values, so whatever values would have been initialized here, they would just be overwritten by the new values, right? So that's basically the point. It's essentially useless. So again, if I push a value on the stack and then whatever the value you have saved before, they would be overwritten by all the new values. So it doesn't serve any purpose. So that is what you have to write. You can just say that the values initialized would not be used, as they'll eventually get overwritten by new values. That would be your answer. Or you could also word it differently. You can talk about how the values would eventually be popped as well, or how the values would be, they would be deleted basically at some point. Okay, so the function to add a value to this stack is expressed in pseudocode. The function will return a value to indicate whether the operation was successful or not. Okay, so we have to return a value as well. So they've already defined a function. Okay, so it's a fill in the blanks. You have to sort of complete the blanks to actually make the code work. Okay, so if blank, then we return something. So there's a comment that says stack is already full. Now in order to do this, we need to see what is the size of the stack, which is 60, and the variable that we use for the current number of values in the stack is onStack. So we can just write if onStack, let's say, becomes greater than 60, right? So what would happen is, on the last value of the stack, let's say we have a stack here, so maybe this would be 59, this would be 60. So you'll have a value here, let's say some value maybe 8, and then the stack pointer will go to 60, and when you add a value here, let's say you have 10 here, so stack value will actually increment by 1, and then it will start pointing to 61st index, which is out of the bounds of the array. So this should be the right condition when onStack becomes greater than 60. So then we are going to return a value. So the hint here is that it will return a Boolean value. So the ideal option should be to go for a false. Should return false. Okay, otherwise if that is not the case, what we're going to do is, wherever the stack pointer is pointing right now, we're going to put the value there. So the name of the stack is this stack, or the name of the array, and the pointer that we're using is called SP. Again, you have to use the question context whenever you're completing the pseudocode or any or answering any question. If you don't use this in the context, then you lose points. And in the next step, we increment the stack pointer by 1 because we have to go one step up. That's it. This gets you 4 marks. Right? Okay, so moving on to the next part. Then we have question number 4. Okay, question number 4 is a bit tricky, so I'll also open the exam report as well to read any interesting comments by the head examiner. So this is also very important because it helps to identify the major issues with the students in the exam. Okay, so the correct condition is very different from incorrect conditions such as onStack greater than or equal to 60. Okay, let's go to it question by question. Candidates understand that a good examination technique is a key foundation. Okay, so question 1, then 2, then okay, so this is very important. The students ended up using length as an identifier name in this question. Okay, so the reason you cannot do that is because length is a keyword, it's a reserved keyword, so you cannot use it as a variable name. Similarly, you cannot have the variable or identifier name as output, input, etc. Secondly, you cannot use plus to concatenate. That is only allowed in Python, not in pseudocode. So like I showed you, it's clearly written in the insert document, you have to use this concatenation sign. Then a formed statement such as attempting to assign a value to a function. So here you have the left function, you cannot assign a function to it because again the value is being returned by this function. So when you apply the left function, it is actually going to return you a string, so you cannot assign a value to a string. And then so the students often use incorrect syntax, and then the understanding of the parameter must be passed by reference was required. Students yeah, so that's the whole thing. Okay, so question 3 was mostly fine. Then let's do the go to 4. A new approach to pseudocode question which need the appropriate design to function correctly. And then there were some common errors. Okay, we'll get to them in a bit. So let's first read the question properly. This is another fun question and also a bit tricky. Okay. So what happens in this question is that they're saying there's a global variable tick which is always incremented every millisecond, which is 1000 times per second. So I'm highlighting the important part. The value of t, I'll just call it t, it's easier to say. The value of t can be read by any program, but the value should not be changed. Okay, then assume that the value of t does not overflow, and again it says it's a global variable, so that means you can assume here that it has some value unless they ask you to initialize or define it. As an example, the following pseudocode would output goodbye 40 seconds after outputting hello. So you have a start, you assign the value of current t into the start. Okay, so this is kind of like a stopwatch. Okay, so if I play a stopwatch here, so let's say the last value of t was maybe this 2.21. so now what we have to do is we have to basically add some sort of a delay of 40 seconds, and then after 40 seconds you should output a message. We're just adding a steam. So the stopwatch starts running, and eventually when it, let's say, reaches 40 seconds, I'm just going to stop it at 10. So then it should say goodbye, and you are literally not doing anything inside the repeat until it is just there to stall. So you'll add 40,000 into the start value, and the reason we have 40,000 because 40 seconds would be converted into milliseconds, so we'll multiply 40 by 1000 and we'll output goodbye. So they've given an example as well. Okay, so this means the question wouldn't be that straightforward. A program is needed to help a user to time an event such as boiling an egg. The time taken for the event is known as the elapsed time. The program contains a procedure timer which will take two integer values representing an elapsed time in minutes and seconds. Okay, so let's start doing it alongside as well. So we have, okay, and then they're saying you are supposed to use the value of variable t, and then you have to output a warning message, and then you have to output a final message. Okay, so there's no mention of return, so it won't be a function, so it would be a procedure. So procedure timer, then we have minutes as integer, and then seconds as integer, and then no return statement because it's not a function, and we have end procedure. Okay, then they're saying that we have to use, so for example, set an alarm, so we'll set it like this, and it says 30 minutes to go, and then eventually the time is up. Okay, so it must send you a reminder, and then it should end. Alright, so the important part here is that the warning message should happen 30 seconds before the elapsed time is up. The initial value of t is already given to us. We can assume any value, and then this is the main part. So we have some minutes and seconds that are given to us, which would be the total elapsed time that we would take. So a simple example is, let's say the stopwatch is set at 10 right now, and our program, let's say, is going to elapse 20 seconds. So we just start it, and eventually when it reaches 30 seconds, so that is when it's supposed to stop. Or when it, let's say if it has 100 seconds, so at the 70th second it should send some sort of a reminder, and that at the 100th second it should stop. So it keeps on going in the background, and here we have some sort of a warning, and then it keeps on going. Okay, so how do we do this? First of all, let's write the values for the warning time and the total time. I think we missed declarations above. Okay, I'm just leaving them for now. They're very simple. Okay, so again, declarations we'll do at the end. Then we have the first, we'll have some sort of a warning. So the warning is supposed to go off 30 seconds before the elapsed time, and again we have to convert this all in milliseconds, so it should be the number of seconds times 1000 to get the answer in milliseconds. So the warning would be some end value, or we can say stop time minus, we'll have 30,000. We can just write 30,000, that is 30 into 1000, like this. And then we also have to define the stop time. Okay, so what will the stop time be? So we'll have the initial value of t that is given to us, and then the question clearly says that you're not supposed to change the value of t, right? So what we'll do is, they are saying in the question that it is always incremented by, it is always incremented every millisecond regardless of the other programs running. Alright, so keeping that in mind, first of all, let's convert the minutes and seconds into the right unit. So we have minutes times 60, that will convert it into seconds, and then we have the remaining value of seconds that we are given. Okay, so just for the sake of example, if I call this program, I will say timer, and let's say if I have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, so this would be replaced here, and then 30 would be replaced here, so this would give us the total number of minutes and seconds, right? So this would be the, okay, so this you can say is the total time maybe, or the current time. Let's call it current time. We don't even need these brackets here, we can get rid of these. Okay, then we have the stop time. So what will happen in stop time is we have the value of t, and we'll simply add it with the current time like this. And again, this is supposed to be in milliseconds, so I need to multiply it by 1000. Once I do this, it will give me the total stop time. So example, let's say the current value of t is at maybe 10,000, and the current time we calculated could be, let's say, 120 plus 30, 150, and then it's supposed to be 15,000 or something, and the new value would become 25,000. And then you have to subtract it from 30,000, so let's make it a larger value, maybe this is 55,000. And then at the 30,000, after the milliseconds have elapsed, how many milliseconds were it? 30 seconds, yeah, before the 30 seconds of the ending time, we are supposed to send an alert. So I'm just get rid of this extra steps. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so again, we have the current time, we convert it into seconds, and then we convert it into milliseconds, and then we add the value of t in here because this is the current timer. And then for the warning time, we have the stop time, and we simply subtract 30,000 from it because this is exactly at this point a warning must go off. Okay, then we have to run a loop, and the loop just has to stall. Like the example they've given, it should just not do anything, repeat until. Okay, so we write the repeat until. Now there's supposed to be two loops. One is supposed to be the warning loop, and then one is supposed to be the stop loop, right? So in the repeat until, again, you are not going to do anything, so do nothing. You don't even need to write this comment, it's fine if you do because it's given in the question. And then when should this happen? When the value of t becomes equal to the warning time. So when it becomes equal to warning, then and only then you're going to output. What was the output statement? 30 seconds to go. So we'll output 30 seconds to go, like this. And then again, inside the other repeat until, you'll just stall, you'll just wait until the value of t becomes equal to the stop time, which is the total elapsed time that we'll have. And once it happens, then we're going to output, what are we supposed to output? The time is up. Okay, so I'll just write the same thing, the time is up, exclamation mark, and that's it. This is the whole program.
So I should ask you, why is stop?
Okay, so with this, question 4 is done, and it was a bit tricky question. So if you look at the examiner report, the question says errors in the formulation of the procedure header, then failure to convert the elapsed time to milliseconds, then omission of adding the start time to the elapsed and the final time, and the attempt to assign some value to the value of t given as a global variable. Okay, so they clearly mentioned in the question, and since it was done in the starting lines, it is very obvious that the students did not look at it properly. So that is why whenever you get these scenario based questions, it's extremely important that you take notes as you are reading the question, otherwise you'll forget a couple of details. Okay, so we have another pseudocode question, question number 5. This is a pretty straightforward question, I believe. So let's go to part A, then we'll read the remaining part. So runtime errors are generated in different ways. For example, a runtime error will be generated if a function is called with invalid parameters. So runtime error, in just a quick recap, is that it happens because of an invalid or illegal operation like division by 0, or you can write array index out of bounds, etc. Okay, so they're saying the pseudocode contains 3 statements that could generate a runtime error. Write 3 statements and explain how. Okay, so runtime error will only happen if it is syntactically correct, and logically it is also, you can call it correct, but it would still generate an error once you run the program. Okay, so first of all, it's very obvious when I write division by 0 and you clearly see the number being divided here, and then you can literally just plug in a 0 here because it's not being checked for a division by 0, so that should throw an error. So this would be the first error. So you'll say that user can input 0 in number, and that would be the explanation. This is statement number. Okay, you guys can see the statement. Alright, then the next part would be, so for the second one, let's see the question. So we have some here. Okay, we have the number here again. The same error would be carried here. So same error would be carried here as well. So you can just literally just access a value that is not within the bounds of the array. So let's say the size of the array is 100. It's given in the question, and I try to access name of the array's data, and I try to access -1 index. Again, there is no check and balance here. So the second error can happen when we try to access or you can say assign an invalid value to number and try to access an index that is out of bounds. Example, maybe 200, maybe -1. Okay, then there is supposed to be another error. Okay, so then we have index mod 2, this is fine. Then we have return value 2 upper right label and count. Okay, let's come back to this in a bit. And then we have end case. Okay, and then we have return ret val. Okay, so what is ret val doing? There is actually no variable, so you do not see any declarations for ret val, right? So this would be another runtime error. Okay, so we have found all the 3 errors. So this should be that ret val has not been declared or and initialized. So it would throw a runtime error. Okay, and then you can look at this part as well, but we already have the 3 errors, so we don't need to look further.
Sir, I have a question.
So moving to the next part, that is part B. One type of a runtime error can cause a program to stop responding, freezing. Identify a particular type of programming construct that can generate this type of error and explain why it occurs. Okay, so this is a very simple case of infinite loop, right? When the program never stops and it keeps on going. So a very simple example of that could be your while true loop in Python. So if you write while true and then you say print, let's say, okay, let's print the @ sign, and this will keep on going forever until the program either crashes or some external factor makes the program stop. So the construct would be conditional loop, and then the example would be infinite loop without ending condition, or whichever meets the ending condition, something like this. And also here the keyword is construct. Okay, you cannot write while loop here because while loop is actually an example of the conditional loop construct. So writing while loop here will actually get you a 0 mark. So please make sure that whenever they use the word construct, you have to write conditional loop.
What if we write conditional loop and we just add while repeat loop on the side?
Okay, so then we have the part C. The function process contains a selection construct using a case structure. Write pseudocode using a single selection structure with the same functionality without using a case statement. Okay, so they're saying that we are using a case of otherwise. Now you are supposed to use an if condition in order to do this, and they're saying that you have to use a single selection construct with the same functionality without using a case structure. Okay, so you just have to use an if condition here. So how would we write it? I'll just write it here directly. So we have, this is part C of question 5. In fact, I'll just do it here. So question 5 part C. Alright, so we have case of index mod 2. So this would be converted as the if condition. So if index mod 2, so I capital index mod 2, and there are two cases. So first condition would be 0 and the other would be 1. So if the condition is equal to 0, then do something else, do this, and you end if, right? Okay, if the first condition is true, then we simply do return value. So you can just copy this. We just literally have to copy paste it. That's it. And we put the arrow sign here. And again, if your arrow sign is wrong, if it is from left to right, you also get a 0 mark for this. So it has to be in the proper direction. And then else, if that is not the case, what do we have to do? We just have to assign stars. So we'll assign the stars. They were 1 2 3 4 5, I believe. 4 stars. Okay, and we end if, and that's it. Okay, examiner report for this. So question 5, there was an error in question 5a. The question stated that the pseudocode contained 3 instead of 4 that could generate. This has been corrected in a published version of the paper. Okay, interesting. It was marked differently, etc.
Sir, how often do...
Yeah, so in the part B, they're saying stronger answers could scored 1 or 2 available marks, and then a conditional loop repeat until, and while some answers suggested was on the right track, but such as loop was insufficient, right? So like I said, you have to use the correct term. Okay, then moving on, we have part C. So part C was pretty straightforward, and they're saying they did not follow clearly the rubric of the question required a single selection statement. Candidates need to read the context, and then many lost the mark if it contained an else if. Okay, so we had to use only single condition, that is if else. So we did that properly. Okay, now we move on to question 6. So this is where things get interesting. These are one of the lengthy questions in the paper. Okay, again we have to read the context very carefully. Ed will be marking everything that is important. So a shop sells sandwiches and snacks. The owner chooses a daily special sandwich which is displayed on the board outside. Each daily special has 2 different fillings. Okay, 2 different fillings, and is made with 1 type of bread. All right. Then in the next part, they are saying that the owner wants a program to randomly, so random is the keyword here, to choose a randomly daily special sandwich. Okay, the program designer decides to store the possible sandwich fillings in a 1D array of type string, which will have the fillings. The array is declared in pseudocode as follows. Declare this. All right, we don't need to highlight. Each element contains the name of 1 filling. So an example would be cheese, onion, salmon, anchovies, etc. A second 1D array stores the possible bread used. So you'll have the bread here. So you have the filling array, and then you also have the bread array, which has 10 values and filling has 35 values. So this is the example, and both are of type string. So the question says both array may contain unused elements. The value of these will be an empty string, and they may occur anywhere in each array. Okay, so again, the best idea would be to actually visualize this question. So there would be 1D arrays. So maybe I'll just pick this as a 1D array, like this and like this. So it has, so we have cheese, we have maybe steak, we have olives, we have mushrooms, etc. And then they're saying some of them might be empty. So let's keep this empty, and maybe let's keep this empty, and same for bread. So we have the white bread, we have maybe the multigrain bread, then this could be empty, and this could be empty, and then there could be some other continued values. Always very helpful if you visualize the problem. And then they may occur anywhere in the array. Okay, so this is very important. Usually what happens is the unused elements are towards the end and they are stacked together, so that is not the case here. So this means continued, and the first array has 35 and this has 10 values. So it has 35 values and this has 10 values. Alright. A procedure special will output a message giving the daily special made from 2, okay, 2 is the keyword, randomly selected fillings and 1 randomly selected bread. Unused array elements must not be used when creating the daily special sandwich. The above examples, the output could be the daily special is cheese and onion on brown bread. Okay, so the question is kind of straightforward. What you have to do is you have to choose two.
The question is making me hungry.
Yeah, makes sense. So what you have to do here is that you have to choose two different. Okay, so different is in bold. That means no two values must be same, and in simple random terms it means that you must generate two different indices. So if you generate index 1, 1 should not be repeated, so it should be 1 and it could be any other value. Similar for the bread, you will only get one random bread, so generating bread is not a big deal. Also, when you generate a value, you must make sure that it doesn't land on an empty string. So when you, let's say the random generated number is 2 and that is empty, so you have to regenerate the value. Similarly, in the bread array, if the bread that you land on is, let's say if you get index 3 here and it is empty, so you're not supposed to proceed further from here. You need to regenerate the value so you get some valid index that has a value like white or multigrain. Okay, so what do we need in this case? So we can just quickly plan this. We'll be needing some sort of conditional loops. We'll be using the rand function here, and that's pretty much it. This is like the main part of the question. Now again, how does rand function work? So we go to the insert document and we see rand will generate a value from 0 till that number which is not inclusive. So the general function for the rand is this. So let's say you want to generate a value in range, so you'll write random of the difference plus the starting value. So this is like the general expression to generate values in the range. And yeah, okay, so the values would be, so we should comment these. So the fillings array size is from 1 till 35, so 1 to 35, and then the bread array is from 1 to, I think it was 10 if I'm not wrong, 1 to 10, yes, 1 to 10. All right, so how do we generate, let's say, values between 1 to 35? So again, if I just write 35 here, it will generate values from 0 to 34. So it will generate values from 0 to 34, and then the start of the range in our case would be 1. So what happens is the minimum value it will generate would be 1 and the maximum value generated would be 35. So this is how we are supposed to do it. And if we had written 34 here, it would have generated values from 0 till 33. So that is not the accurate task. So when we write 35 here, it is actually generating values from 0 to 34, and that is the difference as well. When you subtract 35 minus 1, so you get 34. So this is the right method to start it with. So we'll just write for random value, we'll say it will be rand 35, or we can say 35 plus 1 minus 1, right? We're subtracting 1 because we need to get the difference of the range, and we're adding 1 because the insert document says that it does not include the current value that you're passing in, and we also need the 35th value because there are 35 indices. So it becomes 35 minus 1. Okay, now let's start. So we have procedure, we call it special. They have not mentioned any parameters in the paper, so we're not going to put any. Okay, then we have the values. So first of all, we have
Sir, question in pseudo.
Okay, so let's first generate the two fillings that we have. In fact, let's just generate the bread that we are supposed to use. So for that we'll use the repeat until. So repeat until, and here we're generating random bread, and we'll say non-empty bread. Okay, all right. So until, okay, so the condition here must be that until the value of the bread current index is not equal to empty, right? And again, the question clearly states that there would be some that would be empty. The name of the array is bread and it has 10 values, and like I said, some values are randomly empty here, so we must not look at those indices as they're invalid. So until we do not land on a proper index with a proper value in it, we will keep on repeating, and every time we will be generating random values, so rand of 10 plus 1. Again, this will generate values from 0 to 9. So if you add 1 here, it becomes 1, and if you add 9 in 1, you get 10. So it generates value from 1 to 10. But rand will always generate values in a as real numbers, so we need to convert this into an integer form. Otherwise we cannot address the indices of the array, so it must be converted into an int, and then it should be only around the rand function, not the whole thing. So this will generate random non-empty bread between 1 to 10 indices. So if it generates 1, we get white. If it generates 2, we get multigrain, so on and so forth. Okay, then we have to do the same thing for the filling. So random non-empty filling between 1 to 35. Again, this is just for reference. You're not supposed to write the comments in the exam. It's only a requirement in the O-level 15 mark question. So we again do repeat until. Okay, so the question says now both of the fillings must be unique. That means if we get cheese in the first part, so we need to store that somewhere, right? And then let's say if we get cheese again, so this should not be allowed, so we need to regenerate it again. Let's say we get cheese again, we'll regenerate it. Let's say we get cheese again, we regenerate it, and let's say next time we get olives. Now this is completely fine. So for the first filling we just generate it normally. We'll say repeat until fillings index is not equal to empty, right? And at the same time I'll just write the other loop as well, until fillings index is not equal to empty, and at the same time this value is also different from the previous filling. Let's call it fill 1, right? So this is the most important part here. This is to ensure uniqueness of fillings. Okay, now I'll complete the code. So if that is the case, what I have to do is I'll generate the random index int random function on 35 plus 1. So this will generate values between 1 to 35, and we go to that specific index. Let's say it's 3. So if I go to index 3, that would bring me olives in our case, and so on and so forth. And then after we have generated one filling, we can save it in a variable as well. Yeah, let's store it in a variable. Let's say fill1 is equal to fillings current index. So whatever index we landed, let's say we got olives, so we're storing olives in filling1, right? And then we have to do the same thing. So repeat until index is equal to rand. So we are generating value between 1 to 35, and we're saying until fillings current index is not equal to empty, and the fillings, the value that you currently generate does not equate to the value that we have already gotten. If that is the case, again, like I gave the example, if we had cheese before and if we generate cheese again, it would not work. But if we had cheese before and we had olives now, so that should be allowed, and that's how we're supposed to do it. And let's go ahead and save this in a variable as well, because we'll be printing these values, fillings current index. So you can see there's a lot of repetition happening, and it's not really a tough question, but it's just a little bit technical to actually break down the question and in order to attempt this. Now we just have to print the value, and the value output should be like this. The daily special is filling 1, so it should be filling 1 followed by filling 2 followed by the value of bread, and that's what we're supposed to do. So I'll just output the daily special is comma filling 1 and then we have filling 2, and then we have on. So it has to be done the exact way as they've said on the. So let's save the bread as well. So bread is equal to bread, or let's call it BRD, okay, not to be confused with the bread array, bread index that we got on BRD. And then we have to write bread literally as well, bread full stop. Yep, that's it, and the program is complete. So that was the whole thing. we generated bread from between 1 to 10 indices until it was non-empty. We saved it, then we did the same thing for filling, same thing for filling 2, and we made sure that they didn't duplicate, and then we outputted the values. And then there is declaration that is supposed to be done, so we'll quickly do it. I didn't do it in the previous parts as well. So we have to declare index as an integer, and then we have brd, which would be a string. So we have filling 1, filling 2, and brd, which would all be strings, and then we have to write declare before that. Perfect. So this is also done. This was question number 6, part A, and then we have part B. Okay, so part B is the theoretical part. This is again generally where we have to apply the logic, so students struggle a lot here. The owner decides that some combination of fillings do not go well together, okay, and then we are supposed to describe how the design could be changed to prevent certain combinations being selected. Okay, so the easiest combination here could be that you can just create another array of good combinations. So you can have another array, and then you can have, let's say, cheese and olives and mushrooms, and then you have the multigrain, and then you have the white bread, and then maybe you have jalapenos, etc. So you can just store all of them, and then you just randomly select from this list, something like this. Or the other method could be that you can just separate out the whole thing. You can have one with bad choices and one with good choices, and then you can choose between them. So the easier answer that I would write would be that we can just initialize another array for good combinations, and then we can randomly select from this array. We can randomly select the correct combinations from this array without mixing the unwanted combinations, something like this. Okay, so this should get you 2 marks. Now let's look at the exam report for this, part B. So this proved challenging for many candidates, okay, as expected. A few strong answers were seen. Okay, so let's look at the errors. The use of given array name bread as a new identifier. See, so even I wrote BREAD, but even I used a lowercase bread. So that is different from the uppercase bread, but then I changed it to BRD because it would have been a bit confusing. So don't use it as another variable name when it already exists in your program. Then confusion between the use of generated array index and the contents of the array at this position. Correctly using a conditional loop until a non-blank element is found, but omission of reassignment of the array index. Okay, so no rand was generated inside the loop. Okay, so since we were using the repeat until, so we were doing directly. If you were using a while loop, you would have needed to generate it once outside the loop and then once inside the loop. And then the use of a preconditional loop that tested on an element before the array index had been assigned. So just like we discussed, a number of weaker answers were seen. The following would have gained both marks: creation of list that is desirable or undesirable, when new list is generated, the list is searched, etc. Okay, moving on. Then question 7 is all theoretical, I believe. So yeah, this is all theoretical. So you just have to write about the modules here. So I'm skipping this. And then they are saying that what happens in the design stage and the computation. Okay, so computation methods that we have generally is decomposition, and then we have the abstraction. Okay, so it depends what are they using. So here they are essentially adding some sort of a new loyalty based system, and they are creating modules. So and they are also they're creating new modules. So they are just focusing on the main piece of information right now, and that is abstraction. So the answer here would be abstraction. And then they're saying that there is analysis happening, and then there is some design stage, and then they are creating necessary algorithms, and module designs will be defined. State 3 other items. Okay, so they've defined 2, so you have to define 3 other. Okay, so in design stage a lot of stuff happens. You can talk about the trace tables that are used. Then you can talk about how we create state transition diagrams, and you can also talk about how we also decide the ID that we're going to use, or the programming language. Okay. And then you can look at the marking scheme for other answers if you need. This is a structure chart, so skipping this is pretty straightforward. And on to the last question for today before we call it a day. Okay, so this is a bit challenging question, but hopefully we would be able to solve it. Okay, so question 8, a program is being developed to implement a group for up to 6 players. During the game, each player assembles a team of 4 characters. At the start of the game, there are 45 characters available. Alright. Then each character has 4 attributes as follows. So we have the player, we have the role, we have the name, we have the level. And then the programmer has defined a record type to define each character. Okay, so a record type will allow you to associate multiple values within the same identifier, right? Otherwise you would have needed to create 4 separate arrays, one for player, one for role, one for level, etc. The player field indicates the player to which the character is assigned, 1 to 6. The field value is 0 if the character is not assigned. Okay, so this the field value is 0 if the character is not assigned to any player. Alright. Program has defined a global array to store the character data as follows. So again, since there is this word global, that means there must be some values in it. At the start of the game, all the record fields are initialized and all player fields are set to 0. Okay, so all of the player fields are set to 0. The program has defined a program module as follows. So we are going to use a module assign that will be called with 2 parameters, an integer representing a player and a string representing a character role. Okay, so let's start with the very basics. This is a tricky question. This would be the last question. This is question 7. Alright, so we are doing question 7a right now. Okay, so we have to create a module, and let's say if we are returning a value or not. If we are not returning a value, it would be a procedure. So nowhere it says return a value. Yep, it doesn't, so it should be a procedure. So we have procedure assign, then we write an integer representing a player, and then we have a string representing a character role. So let's call it player, and I'll use short forms. This would be an integer, and then we have the string representing the character role. So we have the character role, let's call it role, and this would be a string. And we just always have to make sure that there, okay, role is already used here. See, we shouldn't be overlapping the names, so we should call it character role or something like this. Again, keep the names simple and short, so it saves time in the exam as well when you have to write them over and over again. Okay, then the question says you have to search the character array for an unassigned character with the required role. Okay, now if you look at the array, so it is of character type. Now what will it look like? So let's say if we have an array like this, it would look something like this. So we'll have indices 1 2 3 4 5, and then every index will have a character type, and then every index will have a player, role, name and level. So there would be a player, role, level, and what was the fourth thing? Name. So there would be 4 properties stored at each index. So when I say character array, or the name was character, I believe. Yes, the name of the array is character. So when I say character index 1, then I'm just referring to these 4 values. So I have to specify which value I'm referring to, and in brackets we have to use the dot notation. So when I write dot player, this means now I have the player property. Or if I do dot name, I have the name property, etc. So the question is saying, and then if found, assign the character to the given number, to the given player, if found, and output a confirmation message. If no unassigned character with the required role is found, output a suitable message. Okay, so how do we see if it is an unassigned player? We essentially look when the player, the value of the player is 0, and this was written here. The field value is 0 if character is not assigned to any player, the player field. Okay, so this value will be 0 if the player is unassigned. So we are going to look for such a player in the first place, and then it should also be the one that meets the required role. Okay, so it would be much simpler if we just assign some dummy values to it. So let's say we have a player, let's say we have player Alex. Maybe the role is attacker, maybe the level is 90, and then so player should be some ID, okay, and then the name is Alex, like this. So let's say we are looking for an attacker, and since it is an unassigned value, we can actually pick this and we can assign this player some player ID. So this is what the question says. So we are passing in an integer that represents a player, which is again an integer. So I can make this, so since this is 0, and since it's the role that I'm looking for an attacker for my game. So what I'll do is I'll assign it a value other than a non-zero value which has been passed in the parameter. So maybe this becomes player number 5, and then this player has been chosen now. Similarly, if I have another one, maybe somewhere next in the array, this is another 0, and then this player is also an attacker, and then they also have some level, and then they also have some name, let's say J. So again, we can just, actually we're just looking for one player right now, but let's say we don't find the player, so we keep on looking for attacker at every index until we end up finding them. So either we'll end up finding them or we'll run out of values in the array. So the size of the array in this case is, it's 45, right? So let's say if the array is going all the way till 45, and then there is no attacker that is not assigned yet. Let's say all the attackers are already assigned to different teams. So we'll actually return empty-handed and we'll say that no characters are available with this role. So this is what we have to do in this question. Again, it's a kind of a bit overwhelming, but again, you just need to filter out the relevant information that we just did right now. Okay, so let's start, and let's first of all look for the player that we have which has not been assigned a role yet. And again, here we have the player number that will be assigning, and this is the character role we'll be assigning. Okay, so I'll leave this space for declaration, and then we start. So here we'll use some sort of flags, because they're saying as soon as you find the player, you will output a confirmation message, and then if there has been no player, then we will print something else. So this is kind of a linear search, and we have to make it efficient, so we'll use some sort of a conditional loop. So we can use a repeat until here. Okay, repeat until. Okay, until we have seen the whole array, or until the, let's say, player found. So this would be the condition. So until you have seen the whole array, this would be simply until index becomes greater than 45. So there are 45 values in the array, right? So until index becomes greater than 45 or player found, and we can just replace this with, let's say, or found, and we'll set found to false initially, assume player not available, something like this. And you can do it with any other assumption. Okay, as long as that is not the case, we are first of all looking for a player which has not been assigned, and again that player will have a value 0. So we'll do that. Let's get the current character, and we'll say, and also let's start the index as well. So index will be set to 1, and then we'll go to our array. The name of the array is character, so we'll go to the first character for first index. So like this. So this was our first index, then maybe there's another one. At the second index, the player is 0, and their role is defender, and then their level is maybe 80, and then the name was chain, right? So this is what we have to do. We have to go one by one. So here we get the current character. Current character would be character index current index. Okay, now in the current character we will have these 4 properties. We will have 5 attacker, 90 Alex, we'll have 0 defender, 80 and chain. So these are the 4 properties. They are mentioned in the record data type. This is the most important part of the question. So we need to get one property out at a time, and then that we're going to do, we have to use the dot notation. I'm just assigning a new variable because it makes it easy. So we write if the current character dot player is equal to 0. This is the unassigned player that we're looking for. So we'll say unassigned player. Again, comments are just extra. Then what we're supposed to do. So the question says, search the array for an unassigned character with the required role. So the role has already been given to us, this character role. So we have to make sure that it also matches, and the current character dot. So again, we have 4 properties. We have player, we have role. So this role that we're looking for, let's say we're looking for an attacker, or like let's say we're looking for a keeper here. Okay, so I'll start. So Alex is not a keeper, I move to the next one. Jane is also not a keeper, so I'll keep on moving. So the same logic applies here. And the current character dot role is equal to the character role we're looking for. So again, this character role is the parameter. So these are the parameters that we have passed, and they would have some actual values. So again, for sake of example, if I call this procedure, I'll say call assign, and then I'll say the player could be integer, let's say player number 5, and the role could be a defender. This would be a string. So defender, so Alex is not an attacker, and then Jane is a defender, and Jane is unassigned still, right? So this is what we have to do. So if we end up finding the role that we're looking for in the player, and if the player is already unassigned, if both of these conditions are true, then what we're supposed to do is we are supposed to assign the player ID. So they're saying you have to give the player ID this. So if the ID we are passing is 5 will be copied here to the player, and we'll just assign it to the current player. So we'll say current character dot, what was the property name, dot player, with this is a player ID, we can call it, gets assigned PLYR. This is one that I got. Okay, let's call it player ID, maybe this is even better. So I'm changing it to player ID, and this gets assigned. And at the same time, since we have found someone that we have assigned, now we can just set the found to true, which was initially set to false, and then we do end if, and then we go to the next index even if the condition was met or not met, and that's pretty much the whole deal, right? Now this was for the case if we had found the character. Okay, so then yeah, so this is the part where we actually found the character. Now how do we know that we did not find the character? Again, going back to the example, let's say we were looking for a keeper, but they were just attackers and defenders randomly. So we eventually reach the end of the array, which would be at 45, and then we will say that it was not found, and for that to happen the found would have been set to false as we did initially, and since this condition would have never become true, found would have never become true. So we can just check at the end if found remained false, or you can just write if not found, then that means that the value was not in the array. So we will output, they're saying output a suitable message, so you can just output no character was assigned the required role or something like this. Otherwise you will output the proper message, and that would be that you have to output Bill the builder has been assigned to player 3. So the player name and the player role that you have to tell. Okay, so you'll output, we'll say the index. So we found here, we set found to true. Okay, you know, this index +1 should go inside the else statement because we want the character details, otherwise it will go to the next index. So the reason is, let's say if we were looking for a defender and we found the defender at this index 2, so we are doing +1, so it goes to index 3, but we need the index as well because we need to extract the details. So I'm just doing it inside the else, that if we do not find the character, then we go to the next index. Okay, so we're going to output, we can say character current index dot name, this would be followed by a d, then the question says name followed by d and followed by their role, so that would be character index dot role, and then followed by again has been assigned, so you write has been assigned to player, comma, and lastly that would be has been assigned to player 3. Okay, so where would we get this player 3 from? This is the value that we passed in. This is the value that we passed in the parameter as player ID, and like this I pass in 5, so I just need to bring back this player ID, PLYR ID, and we end if, and that is it. That is the whole program. Okay, so with this we are done with part A as well. We're only left with part B. It's part B and C, so they're quite simple, but we'll do them in a while. Okay, now in the second part of this question. Alright, and now for the last pseudocode part of the question, part B, then we have some description questions. So they're saying that you have to create a new model that will store the contents of the character array in a text file, form a string from each record with fields separated by the character, which is the exponent character, and then you have to save the string on a separate line in the file. Okay, it simply means, so going back to our example, we have 5 attacker, 90 and Alex, so it would look something like this. If we'll have 5 separated by attacker, and then we'll have Alex, and then we'll have whatever the power was, I think 80 or something. So we just have to do this, and we have to write this as one line of the file. So this is a very easy question. We just have to join all of these values, and the only thing we have to remember here is that if there is any value that is an integer value or a real value, we have to use the num to string method to apply on it, so it can be converted into a string form. And then again, this is also given in the insert document. So num to string, we pass in a value. It could either be real or an integer value, and then it is converted in string format. Okay, so for this, what do we do? Doing question 8 part B. So the procedure is called save, and then we have the end procedure, and then the character is the exponent, so let's call it some variable. Let's give it a constant value, so we don't have to rewrite over and over again. So we can say constant, and this could be, let's call it a sign, and this will directly give it a value raised to power of. Okay, again I'm leaving space for declarations. Alright, now the next part is that we have to iterate through the whole array, and then we have to write that many lines in the file. So the array has a size of 45 values, right? So that is what we have to do. We have to iterate the array 45 times. So for I 1 to 45, next I. Okay, and before that we have to open the file. So open the file, and the file name is savefile.txt. We'll save it in some variable, so we don't have to rewrite it over and over again. Savefile.txt. So then I'll say open file F for write, because we'll be writing into the file, and then we have to create the whole line. And again, line would contain 4 elements. There would be, like I drew before, so we have some sort of the player. So in our case that was 5. Then we have attacker, then we have the name, and then we have the level, something like this. So we just have to make it in one line, so we'll keep on concatenating the current string with the next string. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is, let's call it data, the new string. First of all, in the order that the record was created, we have the player. So we'll create character current index I dot player, and this will be joined by the separator which we have saved in the variable sign, in the constant sign. Now player is an integer. It's clearly written in the definition of it as well. So we need to convert this into a string, so it becomes num to string like this. And only then it can be joined with another string, otherwise that would be an error. Then data is equal to, so we have the player ready. So like this, we have the player here, which would be 5, and then it will be followed by the separator. Now in the same data, in the same line, I have to add the next part, which would be the rule. So I'll just do data is equal to data, and then I'll join towards the end of the same string, right? So I don't need to make another one. So I'll do the same thing, character index I dot role. Again, we'll follow the same order, which is player, role, name, and level. So we have the role here, and I join it by the sign. Then third line, same thing. So data joined by character index I dot name, and then I again join it by sign and data. The last thing would be the level. So data joined by character index I dot level, and again level is also an integer, so I need to make sure that it is wrapped in num2 string function to make sure that we do not mess up the data types. Now the whole line is written, so we'll just write file, and we'll say write file, and then we have the file named in F, and then we just write our data into it, and then that's it. And once the loop ends, we'll close the file, otherwise we'll lose 1 mark, close file F, and that's it. So this is the whole question. And quickly, the next two parts. Describe how the additional Boolean field may be stored with the rest of the fields on one line of a text file. Okay, so they're saying the program has changed and the definition has been modified. So we'll do the same logic as we did before. We'll just add the separator at the end, the symbol, this exponent symbol at the end. And then they're saying the save operation is to be extended so multiple files can be saved. Describe a method that would allow multiple files to be saved and give 2 examples. So in order to do that, you can just create some sort of pattern or some sort of format, right? It's up to you, whatever you want to call it. So you can have the file name, maybe some the name of the file was save file, so we can say save file, and then here you can have some sort of a counter, and then .txt. So example would be save file, and this would be 1.txt, then save file 2.txt, save file 3.txt, so on and so forth. So we can create a file name with a pattern, and then we'll just increase the value of the counter, or we'll increment the counter. So with this, we are done with the whole paper, October number 2024, paper 2.2.